It's Sam Edmund here, and thanks for listening to the podcast. In this episode, Kane Cornes listed his top 5 footy stories from the season and took your calls. Ben Graham joined the program ahead of Tom Brady's bout with Bill Belichick and the Patriots. Riley Beveridge gave us a trade update with a ruck flavour. Kane and I discussed the toughest sporting events, and Robert Craddock reviewed the NRL Grand Final. You can get in touch anytime at waitley@sen.com.au. Thanks for listening and enjoy.
It's a very good morning to you. Welcome to Monday, fired up for another big week of sport, talking it with you. I'm through until 10 o'clock. Kane Cornes filling in for Jared Waitley, who's having a well-earned rest. Sammy Edmund will be in after 11 o'clock. He's been dropping bombs already this morning. Jonathan Segler has been told by the Hawks to explore his options. So the first day of trade period must be open right about now. So the doors are open for the trades to happen. We know that they won't all happen today. In fact, we probably won't get any today, but we will talk and we will speculate about what moves your club needs to make. We are here for Red Energy, awarded CanStar's most trusted energy retailer nationally for 2021. That's Red Energy, and shop online today with Hyundai's Click to Buy. Taking your calls, what I want to know, and the question to you is, how did you feel the footy void left over the weekend? Gee, it was bare, wasn't it? Look, there was a lot of sport on. There was a lot of sport on. Did you watch the NRL Grand Final last night? It's not my go, but gee, it was a tough game. They're the toughest Aussie athletes, I reckon. These NRL players, they are fearless. They get their head taken off. They get their knees twisted. They just get up. They get it restrapped and they stay out there. They're the toughest athletes. Did you watch it? The Rabbitohs and the Panthers last night. It was a thrilling game. A couple of opportunities for the Rabbitohs to win late. It was fascinating. There's probably just not enough highlights in the game for me. Like, where are the real moments that just grab you? It's a lot of repetitive stuff that happens over and over again. But did you watch it? Let us know. There would have been millions of you out there that did. We'd be interested in your thoughts on the NRL Grand Final last night. The women's test was on, the Aussies and the Indians. That was fascinating as well. Did you watch much of that? Did you have a bet on the races? What else did you do? Did you watch Squid Game on Netflix? Is that how you filled the footy void? 1300 736 736. I did notice that the Herald Sun over the weekend counted down their top 21 biggest footy moments of the year. It was a fascinating year, really, when you go through all of these 21 moments that the Herald Sun have revealed. Every year there's massive footy stories, but I'll give you my top 5, which is what I thought were the biggest story. I mean, the grand final moving to Perth in front of 60,000 with where we thought we would have been with a full crowd at the MCG was an unexpected story for me. That was number 5. Number 4 was the Taylor Walker stuff for me. No, in fact, number 4 I've got is Toby Green's bump on the umpire. I can't remember a story generating as much debate as Toby Green bumping an umpire. Some wanted 12 weeks, some wanted him to get off, some want him saying that he can't captain the club again because of that bump. That was number 4. Number 3 for me was Carlton and their situation with David Teague and all the drama at the Blues this year. Number 2 was Taylor Walker and the racism that happened there and the comment that he made. And number 1 biggest footy story of the year was Alistair Clarkson leaving the Hawthorn Footy Club, particularly more so on the back of him guaranteeing that he would be at the Hawks next year. That was the biggest footy story for me. 1300 736 736. What did you do on the weekend? How did you get your footy fix, or how did you get your sporting fix? There were some unbelievable results over the weekend, and I've got to get to a run. Just bear with me later on today. I'm going to get to a running story that blew my mind over the weekend. And now that the Olympics is over, no one gives a stuff about running. I get it. It's one of my passions that a lot of people don't care about. But there's an unheralded hero who lives in Melbourne, and she's an absolute superstar. In fact, she's my favourite probably athlete in this country. And I want to ask you the question, who is an unheralded athlete that doesn't get the recognition that they deserve? So shine a light on some of those athletes that we should be talking more about that we aren't. 0433 98 11 16. Temper, a mattress like no other. I'll reveal mine throughout the morning. But let's get to your calls. I need to have a chat to my next guest, because last time he was on the show, I said we were going to ban him. His name's Brock. He Depends what mood you get him in, Brock. He joins me this morning. What mood we got you in today, Brock?
I'm in a pretty good one, Kano. Hey, I just wanted to...
No, hang on. Last time you rang me, you had a crack about my performance in the 2007 Grand Final. You called me selfish, and then you basically hung up the phone and spat the dummy. So if you're going to ring up, let's address the last time you rang me, put it all out there, have a crack, mate, give me your best, and then we can move on. So far away. Go ahead. Let's not just brush it aside and talk about some rubbish St Kilda staff or some ticky touchwood trade that you want to discuss. Put it out there. You want to have a crack? Have a crack.
It was the 2014 prelim, and I said you let Will Langford do exactly what he wanted, and then you hit back with I actually played on Bradley Hill. Since then, I've gone and checked Bradley Hill's stats, and he had 22 uncontested possessions, so you weren't manning up too well there, Kane. But that's my first point. So
firstly, you played how many games?
Well, there's some big news regarding that. I've actually put all speculation to bed and re-signed at Tyab in the MPNFL for next year, mate. That's doing the rounds on social media. That's blowing up.
And what sort of player are you, Brock? Are you one of those real tough sort of inside players who's just courage, Are you a Luke Hodge type?
Nah, I'm probably a Bradley Hill type myself, mate. I haven't had hardball in 3 years.
Good on you, Brock. Thanks for your call, mate. We'll get back to you and we'll decide whether we want to actually have you on the phone, because if you're going to ring up, have a crack, debate it, but let's not be cheeky and a smart aleck on the phone. And I'm happy to have a debate with anyone about a footy topic, but let's be a little bit respectful when we ring up this show. Like I'm sure Pete will be. He's in Paran. He wants to speak about the Hawks. What's your thoughts, Pete?
Yes, but firstly, I'm offended that you call Brock a guest and the rest of us are callers. So that's the first. You're
all guests, Pete. You are what make my show. If no one rings this show, then you've got me talking rubbish for 3 hours. So it's much better if you ring up like you have done. You want to speak about the Hawks? Far away.
Yes, I do, mate, and that's why you're a great man. Yes, I do. Look, I heard this morning on Gary and Tim, but I just caught it, just the edge of it, that in a Hawthorn, Vandenberg is stating it's all up for grabs. Players, picks, all the rest of it. Now, I hope he's not intimating that they're willing to give up selections because, I was hoping we'd actually be going back to some strategy around the draft. But it sounds like selections, unless I've misunderstood, unless he's saying he's willing to accept any selections for players. But could you assess that, please? I'd really appreciate if you could look into that and give us your point of view of what you think Vandenberg is saying.
Yeah, no, I've read the quote, so it's a little bit. It's good journalism, really. He's made the comments at a function, I believe, and he's basically just saying they're going to look at everything to improve and fast track the rebuild. Look, Pete, I love it. So last week I said the club that I'd be disappointed if they did nothing would be Hawthorn. So I actually love the fact that they are looking to do all sorts of things. So he hasn't mentioned any names or any players, but it feels like everything's up for grabs to improve their draft hand. And I think they've got a very good opportunity to be able to do that when there's going to be a lot of clubs doing not much in this trade period. So there is an advantage if you want to get aggressive. They've got picks 5, 21, 24 and 56. So the question to Hawthorn fans is this. If you went to Richmond and said, look, your midfield is thin. Cochin's getting older. He's not really a midfielder anymore. He's not going to influence games through there. Prestia, good player, but we don't know how his body is going to hold up. Dustin Martin's probably going to play more forward. We'll take Tom Mitchell, but we want you pick 7. Would you do that, Richmond, firstly, pick 7 for Tom Mitchell, and would you do it Hawthorn, which would mean you would have 5, 7, 21, 24 in a draft, and finally prioritise rebuilding the club that is in desperate need of a rebuild that had been neglected by Alistair Clarkson. Tigers fans, would you take Tom Mitchell, a Brownlow medalist, at 28 for pick 7? I actually don't mind it. Have your say on that. 1300 736 736. Lots of calls coming through. How did you feel the void of the footy? Well, a lot of you, off the text message, you went to Netflix. And I don't mind it because the show we spoke a lot about last week, it's got a bit of a sporting feel to it, although you're playing with your life. Damien's in Toorak. What'd you make of Squid Game, Damo?
Unbelievable, Kane. My God. Oh, my God. It was incredible.
Have you finished it?
I finished it.
Okay,
I couldn't
don't
stop
give anything away. I know you won't. I'm halfway through 7.
I couldn't stop watching it. It was just unbelievable. Yeah.
So the best description, I think I said this yesterday, it might have been a review online that I read. It's a mixture, what was it, between it's a knockout and, I can't remember what, there was the most magnificent line. But anyway, Richard's in St Kilda. He says, Kano, oh my God, I watched Squid Game in 2 days. I smashed it. What a crazy show. I had gone past it so many times until you spoke about it on the show last week. Wow. Raylene is on the line. Raylene, you watched the NRL Grand Final last night. What did you make of it?
Oh, I did. I swapped codes. I've got a family member who's a Storm, and I thought, I'll watch it. Oh, my God, what a game. You know, the biggest game I ever watched previously was Jonathan Thurston in that Origin game. That was amazing. And I remember that for the bravery. But these guys, they bang in, don't they? I have to look away at times because I'm so terrified they're going to get hurt. But, gee, it was an entertaining game. It was a close game. That poor guy from Redfern who didn't quite get that, what do they call it, when they kick that second kick after they've kicked a try, put a try down.
Just the extra
the
point.
Conversion.
Yep.
The conversion, yeah. So they get 2 points, so they can get the total of 6, and then he missed it, and that would have made it even, which would have made the last 4 minutes insane and probably extra time. So, no, I was in there. AFL is my first love, but I filled the void with the NRL Grand Final, and I have no regrets.
All right. Well, that's a good call. I watched it as well, Raylene, and I was in awe of how tough these players are. Lots of text coming through on the back of caller Brock. You're an absolute sook, Kane. Give it to everyone else but can't take it. Give Brock your job, says Dan in Somerville. I normally love you, Kane, but you just stooped to his level, trying to attack him personally by asking how many games he has played. You're better than that, Mick. Well, Mick, if you had have heard the first exchange, and Dan from Somerville, if you had have heard the first exchange, I think you may have a different perspective on that. And I'm happy to take your feedback. But when you go to those areas, I'm just not sure I really want you on the show. But I'm happy to debate any sporting topic with you. As you know, I'll always give you your opportunity to do that. Okay, we just had to let Matt go because he dropped the magic early on. So Zoe back in the studio just had to drop that one. So we'll just let the delay build up for a little bit and go through a couple of your text messages on the Temper line, 0433 98 11 16. We're having a beauty this morning, aren't we? Kane, no way I would take Mitchell. I'd rather try Mitch Wallace for way cheaper, says Joe. Yes, Kane, I would do that deal. This is on the back of my suggestion. It wasn't even my suggestion. It was a text to Trade Radio. Her name was Mel. She suggested that the Hawks should be really aggressive, trade Tom Mitchell to Richmond. I see it as a win-win for pick 7. I'm interested in your thoughts. 0433 98 11 16. Yep, I would do it, says Ben, and I'm a Hawks supporter. I think we can go to Daniel now in Pascoe Vale. Daniel, just keep it clean for us this morning. You want to speak about the Bombers?
Yeah, no worries, Kane. We'll do. I just wanted to address the comments made by Josh Marnie last week about improving our draft hand. I guess it's a good thing that, you know, you want to see your team be active in that trade period, but at the same time, I don't want to sell the farm for anything, you know, that we don't have to. Obviously, pick 11 we've got now is probably going to get pushed out to, you think, about 13 to 15. But I still think there's good players at that back end of the first round. So, you know, I don't really want to be selling out to either get a closer pick into the top 10. But hopefully we don't, and we can launch a big attack for Ben King next year. I reckon that's the main target for us.
Good on you, Daniel. Just some trade news. Mitch Cleary is reporting that St Kilda midfielder Seb Ross has turned his back on free agency to recommit to the Saints. He's 28. He's penned a new 2-year deal that will keep him at Moorabbin until the end of 2023. We are up and running. It's Kane Corns filling in for Jared Waitley. Time now to get to our NFL expert for SEN. The coverage is thanks to Neds. This NFL season, take it to the Neds level. Gamble responsibly. If there's an issue, 1-800-858-858. A man who has been there and done that is our next guest. Benny Graham's his name. Benny, thanks so much for your time.
Oh, morning, Kane. Oh, yeah, what a morning it's been already. We've had some massive upsets. It's a tipster's nightmare, to be honest, but a couple of great games that are closing in the last quarter with a few more upsets, believe it or not. But the big story of the week, obviously, week 4, we've been waiting for this most anticipated clash of the season so far, and that's Tom Brady's return to New England, which is going to be fascinating, and to see how the fans will treat him. They'll probably greet him with a hero's welcome, to be honest, but the way he's played it this week has been superb. His social media team have been elite. And believe it or not, he could pass Drew Brees' passing record today against his old team back at Foxborough. So it's hopefully it lives up to the billing.
I've never seen anything like the build-up to this. I mean, just one of the great rivalries. Friends to foes in a way. Who's won the divorce? All of that. So much riding on it. But how many touchdowns does he need, Benny, to get that record?
Well, it's not the touchdown record. It's the passing yards that he's looking at to surpass.
How many?
Well, maybe 100, 150 thereabouts. You'll get that easily, I think. But he's in good form, Tom. He's thrown 10 touchdowns so far this year, and they're 2 wins, 2 interceptions. But it'll be interesting to see how the fans play it. Normally, when you're in an opposition stadium, they get super loud to try and drown you out and have an effect on the communication when they're calling their plays. But who knows? They might show him the respect and quieten down for him. But even with Rob Gronkowski out and Jason Pierre-Paul didn't make the trip, I think the Buccaneers will be too strong. And I think the result of this game won't affect his legacy at all. But the fact that he's heading back where he spent so much time, had so much success, and that relationship with Bill, was it frosty? How did it end? Well, I think that they'll shake hands and hug it out after the game, that's for sure.
Yeah, there's all sorts of talk. I think there might even be betting markets. You can check them out on Neds if you want to, about is there a handshake before, is there a hug, or do they wait until after? Do they try and unsettle him in that way? He's got ice in his veins, so I don't think much is going to unsettle him. Hey, mate, have you played there? It does get freezing cold. It's probably not at that stage yet with the climate at the moment. But what are the conditions in Foxborough like?
Oh, well, in the depth of the winter, it can be a really tough place to play. It's quite an open stadium. It gets very windy. Yeah, I used to play there once a year when I was at the Jets. But anywhere on the northeast, you've only got to look at the weather in Buffalo today. The Buffalo didn't seem to worry them, though. They beat the Texans 40-0. But it does get windy and wet. But that won't. Tom knows those conditions. But talking about that camaraderie that he's built over all those years with his ex-teammates, all the coaching staff, the staff, I've heard them talk about pre-game. There'll be no handshakes. There'll be no fun frivolity before the game. It'll be all business until the final result. And regardless of the result, I'm sure he'll pay the respect on the opposition sideline that those relationships built with all those Super Bowl rings. It's just, and look, I hope that the Patriots put up a fight. They probably will early, but I think the Buccaneers and Brady will be too good.
Let's see. That's going to be amazing. That one gets underway at about 11:20 Melbourne time on, you'll see that on ESPN, of course. Now, the New York teams, both of them had their first wins of the season, Benny, and both in overtime. Let's start with your Jets. A bit of relief for them.
Oh, absolutely. And good on Zach Wilson. He's had a tough start. He's thrown a lot of interceptions, but the defense were able to find a way to stop Derrick Henry. He still put up big numbers, but made it tough for Ryan Tannehill without A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. But yes, the Jets at home broke the duck, 1-3 now against the Titans, who fall to 2-2. And the Giants, well, they looked out of it against the Saints, but they came back. Saquon Barkley was fantastic. He's putting together a couple of solid weeks now. So they get their first win, which really leaves the Jaguars and the Lions 0-4. But yeah, New York, well, for the fans, long-suffering fans anyway this year, it's good that they've finally got a win on the board, both those teams. there's a few great games going on right now too. A couple of NFC West matchups. The Cardinals are currently smashing the Rams 37-13. And the Seattle Seahawks in San Francisco beating the 49ers 28-13. So it's this 17-week season. I know it's only week 4, but every single game counts. And, well, it's just it's exciting if you can get yourselves to a radio or a TV anytime on a Monday morning to catch the action. It's just great.
Now, you were on the SEN game this morning. It was the Browns and the Vikings. Low-scoring affair, but Cleveland are 3-1. Now, their history isn't great, is it, Benny? So we see Melbourne win the premiership after 57 years in the AFL. Would Cleveland winning a Super Bowl, would that be Melbourne-esque, do you think? Like, it's been a long time between drinks?
Oh, it's been a very long time, Kane, in a division where it's been dominated by the Steelers, and the Steelers look like they're going to get beaten by the Packers. They'll fall to 1-3. But yeah, the Browns 3-1, the Bengals 3-1, and the Ravens look like they're going to upset the undefeated Broncos and go 3-1. So it's a tough division. But yeah, the Browns, look, they've got all the makings. Kevin Stefanski's taken over from Freddie Kitchens, and look, they seems to be coming together on a good defensive performance. On the game this morning, the Vikings scored on their opening drive, 7.5 minutes. It was Kirk Cousins to Justin Jefferson, and they took an early lead, and they looked good, but they didn't score again. So you've got to put that down to a great Browns defensive performance. But towards the end of the game, when it was tight, I think I'd rather Baker Mayfield is doing a good job managing the game, using Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb wisely. But when the game was on the line, he came up with a couple of big plays and ended up winning 14-7. But yeah, the Browns just missed out. Well, they got beaten by the Chiefs, so in the playoffs last year. But I think the Browns, if they can be thereabouts towards the end of the year, I think they're a team worth watching. They've got a lot of talent and are starved for success. So a lot of people, maybe their second team. But it's just certainly, there's a lot of 3-1 teams right now. And one we haven't mentioned, the Dallas Cowboys had a really, really solid win over the undefeated Carolina Panthers, the number 1 ranked defense. They were able to put up 36 points. Dak Prescott threw 4 touchdowns. They're another team that the NFL is better for when they're having some success.
All right, Benny, before we let you go, loving your work. Brady wins, so you're tipping that. How many touchdown passes for the great man today?
Well, I'm probably going to give him 3. I'll probably try and run the ball, take some time off the clock, but I'm sure... I'm not sure because anything can happen any given Sunday in the NFL, but I think the Buccaneers will win. And then, of course, Monday Night Football, we've got another great game shaping up. The undefeated Las Vegas Raiders are taking on the Chargers in LA, which is an AFC West matchup. So it's great games galore, but I think all eyes will be on Brady returning to Foxborough. I think the Bucs get the job done.
Can't wait for that one. Hey, mate, appreciate your time, loving your work, and thanks for the chat this morning.
Good on you, Kane.
Ben Graham there, our SEN NFL expert. NFL Game Pass is the ultimate way to catch every touchdown on NFL Red Zone. Start watching today at nflgamepass.com. And a text message coming through from Cam says, Kano, Brady needs just 67 passing yards to claim that record. So that will happen today. No doubt about that. All right, let's go to our expert, who's Riley Beveridge from afl.com.au. He's in the studio. The trade updates for Tyre Power, number 1 on the trade table. Riley, thanks for stopping by again.
G'day, Kane. Thanks for having me.
So, question from Jose. Firstly, it is a bit difficult to catch up on who's traded away future picks and keeping abreast of all of that. But I can't remember Hawthorn being too active in trading away some of their picks. So, how are they stocked, do you think?
Well, this year they start obviously 5, 21 and 24, so 3 picks inside 25. You can't trade 2 years in advance, so no one's been able to trade 2022 picks just yet. So they're fully stocked for next year, as is every club, because we're an hour into trade period and nothing's happened just yet. We're still waiting, but 3 picks inside 25 is a good place to start this year in terms of their rebuild under Sam Mitchell.
What did you make of Richie Vandenberg's comments, which have received a bit of publicity over the weekend, that they're going to be really aggressive? Look, I love it. And already this morning, the report that Jonathan Segler has been informed that he can explore his options if there's a club that would want him, which there would be, you would think. But How do you like the way Hawks are going about it, and are they going to be aggressive?
Yeah, I liked those comments as well, just because I think when you're in their position, you need to be proactive. You can't sit in your hands and hope for the best. You need to go out and make your football team the best it can be, and you start by doing that when you're in a rebuilding phase by going to the draft. And as we mentioned, 3 early picks this year. They might have a couple more if they trade away some experienced players. John Segler's going to be an interesting watch throughout the trade period. There was a bit of interest from Brisbane a couple of years ago, but I think they might have done their due diligence earlier this year, but have opted to go in a different direction. But it'll be interesting to see if he finds a home and then what he can bring them in via a trade, because as Sammy Edmund did report this morning, he is contracted. So it's going to be an interesting watch.
Yeah, it's not going to be one where they're going to get a great draft pick for him. It would more be about opportunity, wouldn't it? So Reeves and maybe another young ruckman. The question from Jose was Laddams. Is he an upgraded, younger version of Jonathan Segler? That's what it would be all about. But in terms of value, Jono Segler's not going to get you much inside the top 40 picks, is he?
No, he's not. Peter Laddams is going to be an interesting one as well, just because obviously told that he can explore his options at Port Adelaide. I struggle to see how a deal might get done there. I think Port's going to be pretty adamant that they'd want an early pick for him and potentially a first rounder, another player that's contracted for next year. But I look at those picks of 21 and 24 at Hawthorn and wonder if one of those satisfies Port Adelaide. I don't think Port can have it both ways. I don't think you can tell a player to explore his opportunities and that they'd be happy to let him go and then ask for a first round pick in return as well. I think you've almost got to, if you're trying to usher someone out the door, you've almost got to take what you're given a little bit. Obviously, he's a very good player and they'll want the best they can possibly get for him. But look, pick 5 from Hawthorn's not going to be on the table if Laddams is their man. So it's going to be interesting to see just what can happen there. I wouldn't rule Hawthorn out of that race, though, for Laddams. I think he's an upgrade on Ned Reeves, who's just coming through the system at the moment. And he could be a number 1 ruck, which is what he wants. Ben McAvoy coming towards the latter parts of his career. John Segler looking for opportunity. So, yeah, Laddams would definitely be an upgrade there, I think.
Yeah, you can't. You're right. You can't tell a player to explore the options and then demand a first round pick for him. And also the damage that does for the ongoing relationship as well is it can't be underestimated. Like for a player that won't feel wanted next year, that's why I just don't think there's any way Pete Laddams is at Port Adelaide next year. A bit of news out of the Saints. There was some talk about Seb Ross just holding out, but revealed this morning by your man Mitch Cleary that he has re-signed a 2-year contract. St Kilda, I don't know, they're fascinating for me as well this trade period. They've got picks 9 and then 46 and 64. And they've said that they want to not do a whole lot. How do you see them? And are they a club that needs a bit more ruck support with Marshall and Ryder coming towards the end?
Yeah, I think they definitely are a side that's in the market for a ruck. They were... we reported on afl.com.au a couple of months ago they were into Hayden McLean from Sydney, that ruck forward that could do a bit of 50-50 work with Rowan Marshall, and when one rucks, the other could play forward and vice versa. So they're definitely in the market for a ruckman. They've also told clubs they want to get back into the draft. So pick 9 is where they start at the moment. They don't have another pick until the mid-40s, I think it is, after that. So they've told clubs they wouldn't mind another pick, whether or not that's in the sort of 15 to 25 range. I don't know how they get it, because they're probably going to have to trade into futures, whether or not they want to bank on improving next year and ask for a top 20 pick and give up a future second or something like that. They are in the market for another pick to get back into the draft. I don't see how it happens. But yeah, good news for them this morning that Seb Ross is going to sign on till 2023. There was a bit of interest last year from Essendon, I recall. So he's a player that was wanted by a rival club, but I think he explored his options this year and opted to stick put with the Saints.
Now, you'll be on Trade Exchange this afternoon, and I do like the little game that you play, which is Who Says No. So can I put one to you this morning?
Yes, you can.
So Who Says No, pick 7 from Richmond to Hawthorn for Tom Mitchell.
Oh, it's an interesting one. I think Richmond says no to that. I don't think Tom Mitchell's necessarily the player they need. They are after midfield depth. I think they need runners in the midfield. I mean, you can't necessarily carry, I don't think, Tom Mitchell and Dustin Martin in the same midfield group. I don't think if they're both going to start at stoppage. I'm just not sure if that works defensively for a team. So I think Richmond, I think that they're, as much as the temptation would be for them to go and start again and go again next year and try and chase another premiership under Damien Hardwick, I do think they need to replenish their young stocks. There's no surprise to hear that they're, as we've reported on AFL.com.au a few times, they've got 4 picks inside the top 28 at the moment. So they're trying to trade a couple of them to get even higher in the draft. I think that's where their priority will lie. I don't think they're trying to get a senior established player. I think they're trying to get an early pick to bring in a really good young prospect through the midfield, whether or not that's someone like a Ben Hobbs or a Josh Ward or a Finn Callahan, if they can move up that high. That's what I think their priority will be rather than trading in experience.
I think you're right. I think Richmond say no to that one. Well, one more then, just while we're on Hawks, and I do enjoy this game. So who says no? Jack Gunston to Brisbane for pick 18.
Yeah, this is interesting. So you'd probably say Brisbane because their cap's tight, but Mitch Cleary actually wrote this on AFL.com.au a few months ago, and it made a sense. It was just a hypothetical situation that Hawthorn's got a lot of money in their salary cap. Brisbane doesn't. To get another early pick through the door, should it be something where Hawthorn goes to Brisbane and offers them that situation and says, look, Eric Hipwood's going to be out for the majority of 2022. He's a ready-made, proven premiership quality forward that you can stick straight into your young side that'll help you chase that premiership in the next couple of years. Hawthorn gets a really good pick back and they pay a bit of his wage to help it suit Brisbane. My view is that it's a deal that suits both parties. It's not going to happen. As far as I'm aware, neither club has suggested it or put that forward. But I think it's a really good hypothetical that could potentially work for both sides. We love hypotheticals this time of year, Kane, but sometimes they stay in the imagination and they don't come to fruition. So
you can make a case, though, because if you're Gunston as well, he's not going to win another one at Hawthorn. Brisbane are going to be around about, you would think. The players that have been injured that have gone up there and had success, McCarthy and Danaher and Cockatoo with the weather or the climate or whatever their fitness regime is up there, and it'll be a nice way to possibly finish an amazing career that maybe has another flag left in it. But as you say, probably won't happen. Righto, and we'll get to Andrew a little bit later on. We'll just keep working through a couple of trade things with Riley before he leaves us and takes up his positions on Trade Exchange from midday. Just Cow this afternoon. Mitch is gone.
Just Cal. Just the dynamic duo now, which is a bit of a shame, but we'll push through.
You'll be right. You're right. You guys are doing a great job. Righto, let's go to Collingwood. If I said to you, what is more likely to happen? Collingwood finish 7th or Collingwood finish 16th? What's more likely to happen?
Gee, I probably think the latter. I probably think they're still in a bit of a rebuilding phase. I think you have to give Craig McRae a bit of leeway as well and a bit of time and a bit of patience if you're a Collingwood fan. There's no doubt they'll improve. I mean, they're going to bring in Pat Lipinski, which will be an automatic starter in that midfield. They're going to bring in Nick Dacos, who would have been an automatic starter in their midfield as a 17-year-old this year had he been allowed to play. So that's the type of quality they're bringing through. I still think, though, that they've got the right pieces in place, but they'll need time to develop. So we've seen players like Trent Bianco come through the system the last couple of years, Caleb Poulter come through the system the last couple of years. These will be good players for them for a long time, but they need time to develop, and it's not going to happen straight away. It has happened before, but I think the overwhelming evidence of the past 10 years would suggest it takes a couple of years for these young kids to develop, and I think it'll be a slow build, but I think it'll be a build that's going to be promising to watch over the next 2-3 years. I just don't think, given what we saw this year, they're necessarily a finals chance just yet.
All right. Well, mate, look forward to tuning in this afternoon once again. Thanks for stopping by and answering our questions this morning.
Thank you, Kane.
Riley Beveridge from AFL.com.au live in the studio, and that was a trade update for Tyre Power, number 1 on the trade table. Joining us now is a man who'll be on the airwaves after 11 with a big show coming your way, but he's been good enough to stop by now. Sam Edmund is our resident sporting guru on this station. Sammy, thanks for your time again.
Kane, hope you're well.
Now, you've got something for me this morning, and it's something that's right up my alley. Something caught your attention overnight.
If this isn't the toughest sporting event on the planet, I'll happily take nominations, Kane. Now, if you miss this, make sure you do yourself a favour. Get yourself onto SBS Demand and have a look at the full race that is Paris-Roubaix 2021. It is a cycling race from, funnily enough, Paris to Roubaix. It's 257 kilometres, Kane, so long enough, but 55 kilometres of that on cobbles, 30 cobbled sectors. Now, these cobbled roads laid by Napoleon's army, that's how far back they go. the Arenberg Trench, Carrefour de l'Arbre, Mont-Saint-Pavel, the famous Velodrome, the finishing lap and a half in Roubaix. Now, it's been a 2.5-year wait for this race. COVID put paid to that. But this year's edition, Kane, the 118th running, moved to the European autumn, and the heavens opened on the north of France for the first time in nearly 2 decades for this race. And it was a muddy, slippery, white-knuckle race like you've never seen in your life. Ridiculously hard at the best of times. These trenches, as they're known, cobbled trenches turned into rivers. The exposed cobbles, those that weren't underwater, were muddy and incredibly slippery. They're speeding onto them at speeds of more than 50 kilometres an hour. In fact, so deep was the water in some parts, Kane, that the punters on social media were lying down and pretending to swim in them. It was pure white-knuckle stuff. Crashes galore, epic stuff, nerves frayed, and you couldn't take your eyes off it. So the Italian, Sonny Colbrelli, he won it. The 3 debutants came to the line, Colbrelli, Mathieu van der Poel, and Florian Vermeersch. Now, Colbrelli came through the centre in a slow-motion sprint, such was the exhaustion, to win it. He collapsed crying on the infield of the Velodrome at the end. Now, those 3, Kane, and everyone behind them, completely and utterly covered in mud. Now, you could only see the whites of their eyes. And of the starting field of 174, 70 failed to finish. Another 10 finished outside the time limit. In fact, the last eligible finisher came in half an hour behind the winner, Colbrelli. It was absolutely gladiator-like. And the best of the Aussies, check it out.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Who was the best of the Aussies?
Heinrich Hausler. He came in 10th. And we have had 2 winners, Aussies, in this race that have won it. Stewie O'Grady in 207, a man from your part of the world, Kane. And Matt Hayman against insurmountable odds in 2016, which was also the year an Aussie by the name of Mitch Docker, who, when you talk about underrated athletes, last night rode his final Paris-Roubaix. In 2016, in a bad crash, and when I say bad, he had his tongue cut in half, he fractured his eye socket, and he had 6 teeth broken off, and he was lucky to survive, yet he kept coming back for more. One hard man, Mitch Docker, and he's retiring this year, the 34-year-old Melburnian. It's an unbelievable race, Kane. It's seriously incredible.
So just quickly, what sort of setup are we going? Because I've seen you on social media. The bike you run with is just amazing. It'd be a good 10 grand worth of setup that you've got. Now, if they're on cobblestones, does the normal tyre do the trick, or are they changing tyres? What sort of setup they got?
Well, they end up changing tyres galore because there's that many punctures and mechanicals that happen going over these cobbles that are as rough as they look to the naked eye on the TV, Kane. But no, essentially it's a road bike that we're all accustomed to. Wider tyres, lower tyre pressure just to try and ease the vibrations. But essentially these guys are just the women's winner on the day earlier, on the Saturday, Lizzie Diagnan, finished with blood all over her handlebars. Her hands were just shredded. Such was the viciousness and the difficulty of the race. So there's no way you can add comfort to this. It's an incredibly hard sporting event. And from the comfort of the couch, compelling viewing.
All right. Well, Sammy's taking your suggestions. Toughest sporting events, 0433 98 11 16, temper a mattress like no other. Send them through your nominations. I always think runners are tougher than cyclists, but I'm happy to debate it with you, no doubt about it. Hey, let's get on to some trade stuff, because some developing news from Kao Toomey from afl.com.au. Now, he has said that Collingwood and Gold Coast are poised for a significant pick swap that will help the Pies secure draft points to cover a bid for father-son Nick Dacos. The Pies are set to land the Suns pick 22, 46 and 58 in a trade for future selections in the second and third rounds. It would give Collingwood a much stronger hand, not only to cover the points, which they will do and they've said they will do, but also allow them to bring in potentially Nathan Kruger and also Patrick Lipinski from the Western Bulldogs. So the Gold Coast throwing Collingwood a bone to make their draft period a little bit easier, Sammy.
Yeah, well, that's a great story. Something had to happen, didn't it? Because there's no way that the Pies can proceed and get Nick Dacos in while also having to get Nathan Kruger and Pat Lipinski in. So this was the deal that was always in the making. Gold Coast don't need picks. We know that. In fact, they don't even need players. They're looking at offloading Darcy McPherson to North Melbourne and giving pick 19 to the Kangaroos just so that North Melbourne can pay his full whack. So they're looking to clear cap space. They're looking to clear picks. So it was always going to be the likely suitor for Collingwood, but good to have some specifics around it from Cal Toomey there.
And you broke the story this morning about Jonathan Segler. Now, Hawthorn have said, and correct me if I'm wrong, that they're happy for him to explore his options. He's 30. He's got a year left on that 3-year deal that he signed. And you would think, Sammy, there would be a suitor for him with a lot of clubs in need of ruck depth.
No, you're right. The Hawks have told him he's got a year to go on the contract, the 30-year-old. They've been really bullish, as you say, of their need to replenish their stocks. And Richie Vandenberg, the footy director, saying they will explore all options to do that. So at the moment, John Segler's the one that is going to make way, given they've got, Ben McAvoy going as well as he's ever gone as captain, and Ned Reeves, they really want to thrust into that number one ruck role, the young giant as well. And as you mentioned, it's a good time to be a big man or a big ruck out of contract or on the move, because there's so many clubs looking for rucks. St Kilda, the Western Bulldogs, Brisbane are in the market for a ruck who can swing forward as well. So John Segler, I reckon he'll have some takers, Kane.
Hey, mate, you got a big show coming up after 11 o'clock. What's on the menu?
Yeah, Crash Craddock off the top. Can't wait to talk to Crash, and he's one of the best, and a lot to talk to him about, given the NRL Grand Final last night, the women's day-night test be fascinating, and Andrew Benzo's going to join us as well. What a massive weekend of racing it was as well.
Beautifully done by you, my friend. Look forward to tuning in after 11 o'clock. We'll speak to you tomorrow.
Cheers, Kano.
George Hewitt's going to be on with Dwayne after 12 o'clock, of course. As always, he has signed with Carlton on a 4-year deal. So everyone came for me on Twitter and on Trade Radio, to be fair. So Blues fans, you've signed him for 4 years. Why? Why have you signed him for 4 years? I got no issue with the recruitment of George Hewitt. I think he's going to come in. I don't know if he's in your starting midfield round 1 next year. I don't know if he's in your starting 22. I think the Blues fans maybe overestimate the impact that he's going to have. My question to Carlton is, though, why 4 years? You've got a player who didn't finish in Sydney's top 10 of the best and fairest. They didn't even offer him a contract, and he probably would have ended up staying at Sydney on a 1 or 2 year deal, perhaps. Why a 4-year deal? Clubs continually get slaughtered by 4-year deals, and the Blues, on the back of deals to McGovern and Curnow and all the money they've given for Williams and Saad, have gone and given a player who may not be in your starting midfield in round 1 a 4-year contract. It makes no sense to me. But anyway, here is George Hewitt speaking on why he chose Carlton.
Myself and my family just super stoked, and obviously with COVID, I won't be able to meet the boys straight away, but looking forward to getting stuck in and meeting them in late November.
What it was about Carlton that made you decide that that's where you wanted to play your footy next year?
They were just really good people. We just had some honest conversations, and I think it's pretty obvious. You just have to look at the list to know how exciting the team and the list looks. So yeah, I was pretty pumped.
So as I said, I'm okay with Carlton signing George Hewitt. Defensively good, bigger body through the midfield, and plays a role. But 4 years? I mean, even 6-7 years ago, 4 years was about the maximum length of a contract you'd get. Bontempelli signed for 4 years. I know that's been skewed with 7 and 10-year deals and the ridiculous ones that clubs have handed out. But when has ever a long-term contract worked for the club and not for the player?
Right. If Jared Waitley was sitting here, it'd be words like wisdom, experience. I wouldn't argue with any of that, because this man is all that and much, much more. Robert Craddock, Crash, welcome to Mornings.
Good to speak to you, Sam. Yes, it's. I'm just recovering from what you might call the Battle of Brisbane last night with the grand final. It was one of those just absolutely brutal affairs where you almost felt you were part of the tackles when you were there. It was Penrith pipping South Sydney, of course. But nice to talk to you, Sam.
Indeed. Great to hear your voice again. So, yeah, the Penrith, they avenge last year's loss, don't they? They win it 14-12. Gee, the Rabbits had their chances, though, going down to the wire. But I wanted to ask you, umbrella view, Crash, as a man who's been around and seen so much sport, particularly in that part of the world. Brisbane's first ever grand final, 39,000 are able to see it in the end. As an event, was it a success?
Look, it was, Sam, because the ticket crush was bigger than a state of origin, even though there was no Brisbane team involved. And I actually tried to stir the pot this morning in my column by saying next year New South Wales starts a contract to host the next 25 NRL Grand Finals. And my point is this, Brisbane is allegedly big enough to host an Olympic Games, but not an occasional NRL grand final, like not for the next 25 years. Like I said, you could host the 2032 Olympics, just that small thing called the Olympics that just breezes through town, the monumental jewel in the crowd. So a bit like the AFL grand final. I know Angelo Rucci from Adelaide's always on about this. There's nothing wrong with the Super Bowl effect of occasionally taking the grand final somewhere else. 5 to Brisbane? Why not? Because they reckon they could have sold 70,000 tickets to last night's game, and it didn't involve Brisbane. It did not involve Brisbane. So I just can't see how it fails, you know.
Yeah, and what of the ticket crush? Because, of course, there was the curveball, the old COVID curveball, and people had to be told that they wouldn't be able to go to the game. Did that all go as, I suppose, as smoothly as could possibly be expected?
Sam, I think the side of it, because they said, look, we're just worried about the COVID threat here. We better cut back on 25% of tickets. I'm sorry. But they took out the tickets in clusters. So there was these giant banks of vacant seats and everyone else sitting shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah.
So in other words, mate, if there was a COVID scare last night, I'm sorry, they're cooked, you know, because like it wasn't one spare seat, then another person, another spare seat. It was vacancy or cluster. And it was just total window dressing. But look, I actually thought late when there was no cases yesterday, they may throw open, say to those people who had their tickets cancelled, look, you can come, but it was too late. And a shame at that. It was a wonderful game.
Yeah, and just on the game itself, you mentioned the brutality of it. So 14-12 Penrith. And I've got to say, though, about South, it was a fairy tale run for Wayne Bennett and company, hadn't it? Oh, Penrith, what they put, was it 50 on them in Dubbo, and everyone had written them off, and they could have pinched it at the end, as I said off the top.
Yeah, they came back. The key narrative for me was this, Sam, and I'll put this one to you to see whether you can remember the last time it happened in AFL, because it's much harder to do with AFL in a draft system. There was a group of kids at Penrith who grew from boys to men together. There was about 8 of them, and they sat there from about they were 14 years old saying, we will win a grand final together. Now, they lost their first semi-final and had to win the last 3. All 3 were brutal. They got in last night and one of them, Dylan Edwards, had a broken foot. He was in a moon boot. Nathan Cleary had a busted shoulder. When the Penrith bus arrived at the ground, Sam, we saw it come around a corner into the stadium and it clipped the side railing and a bit of it fell off. And I thought, oh, there's a portent there, right there, Sam.
There's an omen.
But the point is, I mentioned that to an AFL mate of mine. I said, this is one of the best ways to win a premiership is to home grow it. If you can do it, it's so hard to do. And he said, Dennis Pagan took a group of North Melbourne under-19 team through, like he stayed with them. My knowledge is not that deep. I don't know whether that's right.
Yeah,
but
it is.
It's harder to do in AFL, where you can just get a group of kids that say, we want this bad, we're growing up together. From age 15, 16, that's what got them over the line last night. The historical bondage of kids that said, whatever it takes, we're going to do it.
And was there an element or a feeling of they just wouldn't be denied twice, do you think, Crash?
I think so. It was just their defence with all, and you could see the blokes, you could see them in pain at the stoppages, holding on to Nathan Cleary, his shoulder, and you know, players limping. They just wouldn't be denied. If just say the game was tied and replayed, I wouldn't be surprised if Penrith completely got busted open, because they had three games of intense brutality in a row, winning them all by a couple of points. They changed the way they played this season. They were pretty free-flowing early in the season, but in the finals they became men of stone. And it was quite something, because there's been huge blowouts in rugby league this year, and yet the finals went back to old-fashioned, sort of, as I say, the really flinty, hard-fought arm wrestle, which is rugby league at its best.
Well, you mentioned the Panthers are walking wounded. Well, Dylan Edwards, the star fullback, was literally that. I think it came out in the wash that he played the last month of the season on a broken foot.
It was incredible that a guy on match morning could be walking around in a moon boot and yet he made 240 metres last night. And I love the way when he gets the ball, he just takes on the line at rapid pace. He holds nothing back. He's quite a beautiful player. And, look, there was some lovely stories from everywhere. And Ivan Cleary, the coach, who never won a grand final in 40 years, who got to present the player of the match to his son Nathan, just a beautiful father and son moment. You know, it was quite something. And Wayne Bennett, a 71-year-old Wayne Bennett, being asked at the press conference, well, so your fairy tale's over. And then the question was actually referring to Adam Reynolds, who's leaving the club. Bennett thought it was referring to him, and he took immediate objection to it, said, what do you mean my fairy tale's over? I'm ready to go. And he will join the 17th team in the competition. Probably, we think, will be the Dolphins from Redcliffe. So that'll be interesting. A move at age 71. Who'd have thunk it? Born in the same year as Stevie Wonder, Wayne Bennett. Can you believe it? And Richard Branson. He's still going.
Fair enough. Hey, the women's test match, again, up in your part of the world at Carrara there, the drop-in wicket, pretty slow going. The Aussies outplayed for much of it. A 4-day test match, though, Crash. Now, I know Mother Nature played her part here, but hasn't it opened up the age-old debate about needing the extra day in reserve? Where do you sit with this?
Yeah, it did, although I still say if it hadn't rained, India would have probably won the test. The time is there. And I've heard people say, we need to play more of these tests. I don't agree with that. I actually really like the balance of these series they have where they play 3 one-dayers and then a test, and now we've got 3 T20s, all counting for the same trophy. I'm really looking forward to those T20s now. And look, I know that Elise Perry's been playing for Australia for 14 years and only played 8 tests, but this lovely balanced format they've got of the 3 forms of the game, I just reckon it works. Like, you watch the ratings for these T20s, Australia or India, on the back of India's revival in this series. I think they'll be excellent. I really do.
Geez, I'm loving the shadow boxing and the war of words when it comes to the men's Ashes series at the end of the year. Kevin Peterson's been pretty outspoken from a former player. Joe Root's been non-committal. Then Tim Payne comes out and says, it's going to go ahead whether you like it or not. No one's forcing you to come. What's the latest, Crash, and how do you think this has played out?
Yeah, it's been interesting. It's lovely to see a bit of Ashes banter, but the bottom line is Australia will tell England, just keep picking players until you get a team, until you get 17 players team. And they know it has to happen. Significantly, Sam, England have got the finances to absorb any hit from this. Australia haven't. It's a $200 million series for Australia. They simply have got to make it work. I would be staggered if all 5 tests went ahead at the venues they're programmed at, because I just can't see how they play Perth. That'll either go to a second Sydney test or Canberra, I do believe. But look, the protocols Australia have delivered to England, and England are digesting at the moment, aren't too bad, all things considered. England will be allowed out of their hotel rooms to train for the first couple of weeks and maybe to move around the resort. The problem, I spoke to an English journo a couple of nights ago, and he said, mate, they are so quarantined out that they feel going to Australia is stepping back in time a year. So he said, we feel we're past that stage now where people are out in society. Yeah, there's extra cases, but everyone's vaccinated now. So they'll lose a couple of players, Sam, and I still don't know which ones, and no one does. But I bet a couple of players say we weren't coming, but they'll somehow field a tour.
Yeah, so England will definitely come out. It's just the makeup of that squad, that touring party, you think is well and truly still up for debate.
Yeah, exactly. Already they've lost Jofra Archer, who's injured. Ben Stokes has mental issues. He won't. I don't think he'll be coming. Moeen Ali, who's retired, and they're 3 pretty deep cuts, I've got to say. You wouldn't want to lose 2 more. And I felt there was a chance from this Ashes, with Australia not having played a test for so long, and traditionally ropey on the first couple of days of the summer. I thought if they'd had a good test in Brisbane, unleashed Jimmy Anderson in Adelaide with the swinging ball, he bowled very well there last time under lights. I thought there could have been a sneaky chance, but if their squad is weak and any further, I just don't give him much chance at all.
Talking to Robert Craddock, of course. Now, Crash, up there in Brisbane, unfortunately for the Lions faithful, Chris Fagan's mob came up short again right at the pointy end of the season. But I wanted to ask you about a couple of alumni, some famous old names up there. Michael Voss, Craig McRae, appointed as coaches of Carlton and Collingwood, respectively, and another old line, Justin Lepich, uniting with his old mate Fly at Collingwood. What's been the reaction like up there in Brisbane Lions territory about a couple of Lee Matthews' disciples getting back, well, in Michael Voss's case, back into senior coaching, and Craig McRae getting the chance that so many people thought he was due for so long?
Yes. Well, it's been pretty positive and with a lot of intrigue, actually. I ran into a former teammate of Craig McRae the other day, and I said to him, what do you make of that? And he said, really good. He said, there was a moment, mate, when I thought this kid was going to make a coach. And he said it was back at a team meeting in the old days of Lee Matthews and Voss in charge of the team. And he says just a couple of times when Craig said, I don't reckon we've got that right. You know, he would occasionally speak up. And you can imagine, I mean, the shadow that Lee Matthews cast, I mean, an imposing figure if there was. He only had to look at me and I looked the other way. So it's just that little bit of courage that sometimes means he's a guy who stands up for what he believes in. And I know he's, the raps have come into him, but it's a good start for a coach, I reckon. And Michael Voss was an interesting one because when he was sacked from the Brisbane Lions, there was a feeling that his strategies weren't great, and he was tended to ramble a little bit, and that quite unfairly, that sort of talk permeated apparently right around the AFL scene, and Michael became aware of it. So I think I was told that when he went into his interview with Carlton, he actually addressed that and was sort of very heavy on strategy, which to show them that that he has developed. But it was hard for him going straight into coaching after he played without that sort of apprenticeship. And there was a nice quote from Lee Matthews, which I thought was revealing. And he said, "Do you know what? If you're a champion player, sometimes those alpha male traits that make you the champion that you are actually work against you as a coach. You've got to address them." Sam, do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think George Hewitt was just speaking upon his pending arrival at Carlton, saying straight away he has my respect, Michael Voss, because he's lived and breathed it as a player. So straight away, I mean, to hold a player like that, I think he's telling as well.
Funny the little anecdotes that drift through your head. I mean, Michael, I love the way he's gone to Port Adelaide very quietly, sort of, just regrown his coaching, seeds again, over there. And now he's back into he can't not be a better coach than he was at Brisbane, surely for that extra experience. But he had tough times up here. And I remember Andrew Hamilton from the Courier Mail, they had some great stoushes at press conferences. I remember once Michael had a cup of coffee, all right? And Andrew asked him, and Andrew never asked a question for the first 2 or 3 minutes. And then there was, where is he? Where's Hamo? Where's his question? And then he said, right, now, Michael. And as soon as he said that, I was watching Voss. You know what he did? He crunched his coffee cup. And you hear the cellophane crunching, and he was thinking, oh, here's Hamo. And see, it was funny.
It was amazing. Now he's the media manager at the Lions, Hamo.
Yeah, now he is. Yeah, he is. He's the media manager. And that's right. So he's jumped the fence. It's amazing. But I still remember on my tape recorder, you could hear the sound of Michael crunching his coffee cup at Hamo's probing questions. It was funny, Sam.
Now, hey, Crash, have I got this right before I let you go? Obviously, a big weekend in racing. Now, we saw the Star Galloper Incentivised win the Group 1 Turnbull Stakes at Flemington. Now, trained in Victoria by Peter Moody these days, but have I got this right? As a proud Queenslander, and I know this is where Incentivised hails from, you're claiming this one, aren't you? Well and truly.
Oh, well, look, he comes from up at Toowoomba, where he's bred up there, and I did my first job up there and stayed in contact with a couple of mates of punters. And they've been saying for 3 months, just laying it on the table, saying this: Incentivised is the best galloper to come out of Toowoomba since a horse called Burnborough in the 1940s, who won 15 races in a row. And they just declared, they said, this is what will happen to this horse. He will win endless races in a row. There are times he will go south of the border and he will start at $3 in races where he should be $1.20. He said, it will take the world to realise how good he is, but when they do, he will firm into favouritism for the Caulfield and Melbourne Cups, and they said the times he is setting on the track are just unbelievable. He's a striking animal. He can carry weight. And they said, just watch him go. And I'm sort of thinking, well, yeah, okay. And they backed him to win his maiden, wait for this, Sam, at 20-1 at the Sunshine Coast. Like this machine, the new Farlap, the new Tulloch, 20-1 in the maiden. I mean, that's got to be the bet of the century, hasn't it?
Unbelievable.
So, yes, everyone up here is watching him and just feels that he's not V8, he's V10 in his engine. Yeah.
Crash, great to talk to you, sitting in for Jared. Great that you can make yourself available today, and great to have your wisdom, as Jared would say, on a Monday after a big weekend of sport. Enjoy the rest of the week.
Thanks, Sam. We battled through. Enjoy it, mate. All the best. See you.
Robert Craddock there, Crash, one of the greatest journalists in this country.
Incentivise kicks at the 250 from Young Verda. Very Elegant has to find. Chapata runs on. Incentivise finds, though, at the 100 metres. 3/4 Young Verda. Incentivise getting tired. Young Verda coming at it, but Incentivise is finding, and Incentivise has won. A new Group 1 star has won it from Young Verda. Chapata, photo fourth, Very Elegant or Explosive Jack.
He's got a very good nature, and I think he's a very kind horse, and he's got a brain which a lot of good horses have, you know. I think it takes them a long way, and that's the reason why they're apart from the others, you know. So he's become more stronger now, and he's become more mature, but he's athletic for the size of him, and he's got a lovely big stride on him. So I think he covers good ground, and he's very clean-winded horse.
So Incentivise salutes. They were the final stages of the Turnbull Stakes at the weekend, and then we just heard from the jockey Brett Preble from Bensley this morning as I look across at the great man who I would assume has had a magnificent weekend. Big welcome to you, Andrew Bensley.
Yeah, good on you, Sam. No, great racing out at Flemington, and we know that we had a rain-affected track in some way with the forecast. It probably didn't arrive in big bucket loads, but it was still soft. And that's where probably a lot of us were disappointed by Very Elegant, because she does like the sting out of it, but she didn't have the finish. But let's not get away from the obvious here. Incentivise is the raging favourite to win the Caulfield Cup after winning his maiden. So for our listeners that may not follow racing, his first ever win was in April of this year.
That's amazing.
And he's come all this way, 8 wins in a row, and here he is, a raging favourite for a Caulfield Cup. It's staggering.
And what a Very Elegant. Just an off day?
Maybe it is, yeah. Look, Chris Waller's been very upbeat on his social media. He's put a video out this morning of her down on the beach on the Mornington Peninsula. She'll do that for the next 3 days before coming back to Flemington. Maybe we're just underselling. We're looking for something that incentivises was just simply too good on Saturday. Very Elegant can bounce back in a Cox Plate. Don't worry about that. Young Werther was very good for Danny O'Brien from a Caulfield Cup point of view. The disappointment for mine was Dennis Pagan's horse, Johnny Get Angry. We know the horse was so good to win the Derby last year. The emotion of what we saw from Dennis Pagan. Dropped out, finished last. Tests underway today. Whether there's an issue, we're just not seeing the best of Johnny Get Angry. So it was I sent Dennis a text yesterday, and it was a short little reply, and I thought, he's back at his footy coaching days. I won't send another one. You got to feel for them when they put all their energy into horses that just don't come up.
Jeez, what about the performance of the jockey Regan Bayliss then? So 2 Group 1s in an hour, the Flight Stakes, the Epsom Handicap. Tell us a bit about him, will you?
Well, Regan Bayliss comes from Victoria. He is a young kid who went to Hong Kong. And he went to Hong Kong. He now reflects on it, simply too young. It is really a hard place as a young kid to go and ride at. It's very competitive. He found it really hard. He came back to Victoria. He struggled to get rides in Victoria. So he said, I'm going to go to Sydney, which is probably similar to Victoria. It's so competitive. But he's been able to link himself with Gai Waterhouse, John O'Shea, leading trainers in Sydney, and he's now got the opportunities. 2 Group 1s, Never Been Kissed wins the Flight Stakes and could run this week in the Spring Champion, and then Private Eye won the Epsom, the famous race, storming down the outside. I spoke to Regan on Saturday night. It was just, g'day, Benz, how are you, Benz? I'm so pumped. It was just exciting to hear it from him.
That's great, isn't it? And maybe now it comes full circle in the School of Hard Knocks. That
will help him. Yeah, you hear
him.
it with footballers, you hear it with sportsmen, and jockeys are sports people.
Serves them well. Masked Crusader, amazing in the Premier Stakes. Has to be one of the top fancies for the Everest in a couple of weeks, I'd assume.
Yeah, Saturday week. Look, Tommy Berry said if we can only jump better and place him a little bit closer, it's going to be a really strong Everest. Classique Legend is the favourite at this stage. Will run for the first time this prep in the Everest, but has been targeted that way since coming back from Hong Kong. But I spoke to many rival trainers up against Masked Crusader yesterday, and they said he's simply the one to beat. There's going to be high pressure, high pace from the start of the race in the Everest. If I know a listener's text in asking about $6.50, I'd be actually taking that now.
Yeah, that's Brad. Can you ask Benz if I should take the $6.50 for Masked Crusader now or wait for the barrier draw? But you're saying go for it now.
I'd go now because wherever Eduardo and Guitra and those sort of horses, Nature Strip, all barrier from, where they start from, it's not going to impact Masked Crusader. The thing that will help Masked Crusader is just the simple pace that's in the race. It's going to be on from the start, and Masked Crusader will be storming home. I'd take any price hit now. It's clearly the one to beat for mine.
One other question without notice from Cam in Churnside Park before we let you go, Benz. Can you ask Andrew if Sir Dragonet's run should be forgiven? I thought he was ridden upside down.
Yeah, look, they went forward. They had a wide draw in the Turnbull, and Ben Allen, no fault of his, they went forward, tried to slot in, and then he got stuck 3 wide for the whole trip. Total forget run. Very Elegant's the one that we're a bit toey about because she had the right run. Sir Dragonet just didn't get the race luck. So, yeah, we certainly forget it.
You can catch Bensley on SEN Track. Do not miss it. Monday to Thursday, 8 till 11. He does a magnificent job. And if that's not enough, he butters up on a Saturday from 9 until 12 as well. And he's absolutely locked and loaded, and it never stops. You go home and you don't put the feet up, do you? You get ready for tomorrow. You work the phones.
This notebook that you...
I'm obsessed with the notebook.
You are obsessed with it. I go back and fill it up with tomorrow's news right now. So it's all happening like trade week.
Yes.